Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're at it today. I'm working on the 2J. I was trying to get to it for the last couple days. These thrust bearings right here are what was holding us up. Again, that goes for cylinder number 4 there, and it stops the crank from walking one way or the other. So those came in today. So we're gonna get started. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start with the these are the oil squirter block offs that I was telling you about. It's gonna build more pressure to the crank, more pressure to the cams, and like with the stock pistons that come in it, the oil sprayers are a good idea. It keeps temperatures down, keeps it cool. When you go forged, they're not as important, and when you're spinning it and you've got a high performance, that oil pressure is more beneficial at the crank and at the cams and different places like that. So really easy to put in. They've got a nice rubber grommet on it. You're just gonna slide it down inside here and push it in. And then I'm going to take just a drop of Loctite here, and I like Loctiting it in. It's inside the engine. I mean, if it ever did come loose, something like that, could cause some damage. So put that in there. And that's it. I'm going to snug them up. I'm not going to put too much torque on it because it's just a little bolt. So now that those are in, like I said, this is one controversial part of the engine. Some people like the oil squirters, other people don't. I myself, when I'm building an engine, oil squirters, if we were putting in the stock pistons, you know, it has its benefits. Once you go forward, you're going to be spinning it at the RPMs we're spinning it, and the oil pressure is more beneficial other places. So what I'm going to do, I've got the ARP mains here. So another, for those of you who have built an engine and used ARP for anything, this is going to be another controversial part. They tell you very clearly to put them in finger tight. Wheel them down finger tight. That's fine. I'm going to put them in finger tight. You're going to see me take an Allen key and touch them. I'm not reefing torque on them. Like they tell you, if you want, you can Loctite them in. What they don't want is they don't want you bottoming out the stud and reefing on it, causing the bottom end of the stud or the block to disfigure, deform. And if you put too much pressure on it, it can happen. Although, I mean, it happens more with aluminum than it does with cast. You're not typically gonna do that with cast, but I put them in finger tight. You are gonna see me take an Allen key, and I'll show you just how hard I'm putting them in. I'm not reefing them in. Okay, here we go. I've got an Allen key in my hand. Again, I'm not reefing on it. I'm not even putting it on like long ways and wrenching it on there. I'm just gonna put that in there. I'm gonna wheel it down to the bottom. So that's the bottom. So you can see that's how much pressure I'm putting in it. I'm not reefing it down in there. I'm just tightening it just because my fingers, I don't feel like the consistency with my fingers is gonna be enough. So I just put it down to the bottom. I don't reef them in. Just, that's it. All right, so we've got all the studs in. We've got the oil squirters installed. Time to put the crank in. So I'm gonna take, again, I just use the Royal Purple assembly lube, but any assembly lube. You want to be pretty generous with it, right? I'll run that in there. I'm gonna hit that with my finger just to make sure that it's all evenly spread on the whole bearing. Now, before I drop the crank in, these thrust bearings that we were waiting for. So you can see on the side of the thrust bearing, it's got these little grooves. That's for oil. So you want those on the outside. You want those grooves going to the outside. It's going to allow oil to slide in between that bearing and the side of the crank. So again, even with these, I'm going to lube them up a little bit, and the lube's going to help, the assembly lube's going to help hold them in place while I drop the crank in. That's going to go in there like that. It's going to go in there like so. Comes out. Now, I'm also going to hit, again, just because I like to make sure there's lots of lube, I'm just going to hit the main journals on the crank with a little bit more lube. Make sure that's good and lubed up. All right. So, again, I've already inspected the crank. You're dropping it in. You want to be real careful not to knock those thrust bearings out. Like that. And you can see when I spin that, you can see that thrust bearing comes with it. So that's the assembly loom, so I want to leave that in there. Make sure that that there is down. Make sure that that there is down. Hit it with a little bit more lube. And then I'll put this on. They're all labeled, and it shows you which way is facing forward. So this is number 7. The arrow is facing forward. This is going to go at the back towards the front of the engine. Again, like everything else, we're going to hit that with a little bit of lube. So forth and all the way up. Now, this one again, this is number 4 that goes in the middle and also holds these other 2 thrust bearings. So, I'm going to put just a touch of lube on there, on that side. That's going to slide in there. There's going to slide in there. Okay, so just tapping them down softly before to get them into place before I put the bolts on and torque them down, because I don't want it to go down on an angle. Like that. So now, using APR bolts, they'll tell you to use their ultra torque. You want to get a little bit on the threads, on the studs, on the washers, and the bolts and the nuts. So this stuff here, though, you don't want to get inside of the engine. So you want to be a little bit gentle with it. Make sure it's getting on the threads, and that's it, not down inside the engine, like that right there. So we've got everything in. We've got everything with the ARP Ultra Torque lubed up. Everything's the way it should be. At this point, I've seen tons of guys do it. Again, I'm not saying that they're not doing it the right way. I'm against it. You'll see them take an impact gun and just softly touch them down with an impact gun because they want to save themselves 2 minutes with doing it with a ratchet. I don't like doing that. I definitely think it's worth your time doing it by hand. You can feel if something's binding, if something's not working right. You can feel that, as where with an impact you can't feel it. So for all of the 2 minutes that you're going to save, just take a ratchet if you're building your own engine. I wouldn't use an impact ever anywhere on an engine. You're not going to see me do it. Maybe like an oil pan, you can zip them in, but very rarely would you ever see me use an impact when putting an engine together. It's just bad habit. It only takes a second over torque or screw something up. So it's going to take me 1 extra minute here to do this by hand, and I know that everything's going to be done right. So. So, just snug them down a little bit there. Now, we put it on the torque wrench. So, standard torque specs for the main caps on a 2J. Like you saw when I was speccing the bearings to make sure that I had proper clearance, it was 33 foot-pounds across the board and then 1/4 of a turn. I'm not going to, I don't have to do that with these ones here. With ARP, they want it on a 60 foot-pound across the board. You're gonna do that, I'm gonna do it in 3 different steps. So, I'm gonna set this at 20 foot-pounds, then I'm gonna do 40 foot-pounds, and then I'll do my final at 60 foot-pounds. When you're working on the cylinder head, you're gonna wanna work from the center, and you're gonna wanna work your way out. You don't have to do that with a crank. A crank can be, I've seen people go from the front to the back or the back to the front. Just because I do it, it's force of habit. I usually do my cranks the same way that I do the head. So I'm going to start in the middle. I'll do number 4, number 3, number 5, number 2, and so forth and so on. And I'm going to do it 3 times here. So. So we've got the crank in. We've got them all torqued down in sequence. So now I'm just going to go along. I am going to wipe off. Again, it's take the time, wipe off all the excess ultra lube, the ultra torque. It doesn't need to be in there. It's served its purpose now. So. That's it. Now that it's in, like I say, you're gonna see me checking out. I mean, you just want to make sure that everything's moving. And these 2 bearings here, the thrust bearings that are on the side, again, I'm gonna get out my end gauge and make sure that it's not sliding. But these 2 bearings, you just want to make sure that everything's sliding. Check, make sure it's not moving anywhere, like front and back. And you're gonna check clearances. You can't finish checking clearances until the pistons are on and the rods are on there. But that's it. Crank's in, spinning smooth. That's it. We've got the crank installed. So next step from here is the pistons. So that's where we're gonna end today. Like I said, I'll do another video maybe tomorrow. I'm gonna try and get the pistons in, the rods in, and then we'll see how far I get. Maybe I get the heads on or the head on. But yeah, for now, crank's in. 2J, 1 step closer to being complete. She spins nice and freely, and it's gonna be a pretty crazy engine when it's done. So again, guys, this year engine. It's going in the Toyota Supra, the Veilside 4509 giveaway Supra that we're building. Everything that gets done on the car gets voted on by you guys, the subscribers, and at the end, one of you guys is going to win it. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.